Hey everyone, this is Carbonite, and it is with a heavy heart that I bring you an updated Herminia deck profile. So as always, let's go ahead and start off with how the deck is. So first of all, is this deck competitive? The answer is no. This deck is still incomplete. It has gotten like 3 sets of support and it still feels very, very bad. Like half the time you're fighting against the deck to try and make it do something. So if you want to play this deck, don't really expect to have too much fun unless everything goes absolutely perfect for you. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and just hop into the deck profile. So starting off with the ride line, we are actually opting to play the full powerful ride line, which is not terrible, not great. We'll talk about this later, but let's go ahead and just go over the ride line. So we've got your generic D starter. The grade 1 has the Vanguard rear skill, where you can Soul Blast 1 and discard a card to draw a card. Of course, that being a once per turn. Absolutely god-awful skill because you do have to discard before you can actually draw, so it's not even really a good filter. A good filter would be drawing then discarding. I have no idea why they decided to leave it like that. But then the other effect is that on Van, if you don't have any cards in your soul because you use, say, the first skill, you can actually ride into the grade 2 for free. And then of course the grade 2 does have this same skill where you can ride into the Coming Beauty Herminia for free as long as your soul has no cards. And then when she does attack, she does actually get an extra 2k. It doesn't really matter that much in this deck, but it sometimes does depending on your build because it can become a 20k Vanguard swing. And then of course, for a grade 3, you can actually choose which Herminia to go for. I've opted to go for the classic Herminia for a few reasons. One of the reasons is because I cram so much dog shit into this deck to make it work that I don't really have space to be committing to extra copies of Herminia. If you want to play the new Herminia, I think you do have to play at least 2 or 3 copies of base Herminia in the deck in addition to all your Persona rides, because you are still very reliant on finding that second Herminia in order to actually do something. Whereas this one does actually do something even if you are going first. It does something even if you don't draw into the correct cards. And this deck is super reliant on just like drawing into combo pieces, so I figured the less I have to fight this deck, the better. But anyways, base Herminia just has the axe skill to counterblast 1 to get 5k until the end of turn. And the reason that you do need to do that is because of her second skill, which is if you have no cards in your soul and no face-up damage, at the end of the battle she attacks, you can discard a card, restand a unit with powerful, and reduce the next CB you pay for it by CB1. So she does actually combo with one of the other cards in the deck, which is the main reason why you have her in grade 3. But ideally, you would not want to stay on her for more than 1 turn. But unfortunately, just because of the fact that this deck is just insanely bad, that's what's going to end up happening most of the time. Alright, moving on to the main deck. Of course, we do start off with the grade 3s. Of course, that being the second copy of, or the second Herminia, which is, of course, your main Vanguard. So, of course, she does have a dress up ability, so she's always treated as Coming Beauty. And then during your battle phase, if your damage zone has 3 or more face down cards, the cost of all of your auto abilities with Powerful is reduced by Counterblast 1. And then, of course, her powerful ability is that if you at the end of the battle she attacks, you can discard Herminia in order to stand all of your front row powerful unit rear guards. Then of course if you did Persona Ride, the cost can be paid instead with CB1. And because of her first skill, it is theoretically possible to get this skill for absolutely free. But yeah, in general, this card is not very good. It takes just way too much setup because you need to have 3 face down damage, which in this meta is absolutely terrible. Like this, it's really hard to get to 3 face down damage on your first grade 3 turn, even if you put this in your ride deck. It's a little bit more realistic to go to be there on your great turn 4, so when you Persona Ride it, so that you get a free double restand. But the problem is there's just not really that good of a payoff for it. Like the best card you want to be using this with costs Counterblast 2, and it only reduces it by Counterblast 1. So that means that you do have to have like 1 face-up CB, which, like, what are you gonna do with that? It's just really awkward numbers all around. The 3 face down damage is just super awkward to get around. I've actually had a game where I swung with this and then I checked a heal trigger and then I healed down. So because I healed down to 2 face down damage, I could no longer restand. So obviously this card is just kind of very poorly designed, in my opinion. And the fact that it really is honestly a huge struggle to try and even get this off. But of course, just to increase our consistency, because Persona Ride is kind of important, I am playing, of course, the Chalice, the Gratis Grado, just to try and improve our consistency just a little bit. Alright, so moving on to the grade 2s, I of course am playing the best powerful unit currently that we have right now, which is Realize. So she does have the act once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1 and choose whenever Vanguard gets 5k. That skill is actually probably the most important part about this card, which is very, very sad. Because one of the biggest problems that Herminia has is actually emptying out the soul. You know, the whole riding mechanic kind of counteracts a lot of what this card wants, or what this deck is trying to do. It wants to have an empty soul, but doesn't really have any way to enable it outside of, you know, drawing your regards. And if you draw a hand, God forbid, if you draw a hand of cards that don't Soul Blast, you're kind of just on a vanilla Vanguard. So like I said, it is a very big fight to kind of make this deck work. You have to basically play against yourself before you can actually play the game. But of course, the other reason she is probably the best powerful unit is that when she attacks a Vanguard, if you have no cards in your soul, you can CB2, give her 10k until the end of turn. Then if you're on a Herminia, she performs the single drive check. So her being the best unit is great. Drive checks are great. You know, adding cards to hand, hitting triggers, always good. The problem is that it does cost CB2, so it is super, super awkward with the other Herminia, because if you're at 3, or let's say you start with 3 face-up damage, what you're gonna do is you're gonna swing with this, you're gonna CB2, now you have 1 face-up damage. Okay, so your CB1 card skills aren't free yet, so you have to swing with your Vanguard, you have to counterblast 1 because it's not free to restand this. Now you have 0 CB. It costs CB1, but you have no CB, so what's the point? You would literally have to be at 4 damage in order for that to be at all useful, for face-up damage too, or just like some really weird combination, or find your one other combo piece that allows you to countercharge. But just like I said, it's a huge fight. The biggest battle in this deck is trying to actually make the deck do anything. Anyways, continuing with that, we are playing the second best powerful unit, which is actually very, very sad that it's the case. It is, of course, this card, Halfa. So during your turn, if your soul has no cards, it gets an extra 10k, so it's a 19k beat stick. So going first, this is actually really good because you can just call it down and you have a 19k swing in an 8k that does hit over defensive unboosted, which is pretty good. But the main reason we're playing this is because when it is chosen by the ability of your Vanguard with Herminia or Hazard, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. So remember that if you choose this to stand with the base Herminia, you do get to get a free draw for free because the cost is reduced by counterblast 1. So of course, this card is also very bad too because it is a Hazard card, which means it has to have 9k. It can't have 10k. That would be too much to ask. A lot of times it might not end up making a difference, but in the long run, it does make a lot of your numbers very, very awkward. Like sure, you'd think hitting 29 sounds pretty good, but then you realize if you're going second, this swings 19 if they get a defensive. Guess what? Even though it's a grade 2 that gets 10k, doesn't hit because it is 1k less. It also makes like when you're boosting it very awkward because it's like 27, which is just an easy 50k guard. If it had 1k more, it would be 28. But just the fact that it doesn't get there is a super big hamper on it. There is one card that kind of fixes it, but not really. It's a grade 1, but enough of the down talking. Alright, so in a very weird twist of fate, I've opted to only play those 2 units as our only powerful target. So those are the only cards that in this deck that you can actually restand outside of things like Persona Ride. The main reason is because, like I said, those are the 2 best powerful units. So you're not really getting any benefit from, you know, restanding anything else. But let's go ahead and get into the cheeky part, the actual engine, the part that makes this deck a little bit spicy, a little bit special. Of course, the first card The first card is, of course, 4 copies of Frenchette. Frenchette is a new card from set 2. It has a first skill that doesn't matter, but the main skill that matters is that when it attacks, if you have 3 or more different card names, this unit gets 5k, and then at the end of that battle, if you have 4 or more with different names, you can choose one of your other rearguards returned to the hand. So the main reason why we have this is because it allows us to kind of... in one sense, it does also help us protect our relies, because relies become huge attack magnets for your opponent because they really don't like you having, rear guard that can perform drive checks. And the big problem with that also is that your most important rear guard kind of enables you to actually do anything. Because if you lose rely, if you lose your powerful units, you kind of just can't do anything because you're super rear guard reliant, and not only just rear guard reliant, specific rear guard requirement reliant. So she kind of just helps that. We also have a bunch of on-place skills that she enables us to reuse. Of course, the main one being our 4 copies of Stolas. Stolas is an absolutely garbage dog shit card, and I hate her with every fiber of my being. But unfortunately, she is also the best powerful support card, which is super, super annoying. So the main skill is that when she's placed on rear during the main phase, you choose a card from your soul, put it into the drop. Then if you have a Vanguard with a friend or powerful ability, you choose a card from your drop with either the friend or powerful ability, and you may call it to rear guard. If you called a card, you cannot call cards from the drop until the end of turn. So that putting to soul from soul is not actually a cost. So if you have no cards in your soul, you still get the effect. And like I said, a big problem with this deck is you lose your rear guards to the drop zone super, super easily. You have to discard them in the early game because you literally, when you ride to grade 1, you have to discard 2 cards to ride to grade 1 if you want to be super efficient. So this just does help in the sense that it lets you get everything back. But she is absolutely terrible because she herself is neither a friend nor a powerful unit. So there's a lot of cards in powerful in Herminia that call for powerful units, and if you want to use her to get a powerful unit on board, you're only getting 1, and sometimes you need 5, which is why she is terrible, because that means everything else on your board better fucking be a powerful unit, otherwise you're not getting effects. And one of those effects that you're not getting is that if you have 3 or more rear guards with the powerful or friend ability, it gets boost, which is almost never going to happen, because in order for her to be a booster, you literally have to have an almost entirely full board of not just rear guards, of actually powerful units. So not even just units, rear guards. Your board has to be full. Your Vanguard does not count, which is another reason why this card is so bad, because you call it and then it ends up doing nothing. So she is just absolutely god-awful, but the best card, so you do have to play her in the deck. But you also have Frenchette to help you revive something every single turn, so it's not the worst if you're playing this. Alright, so moving on, we are actually playing a very special package here. We're going to be playing the 3-2 split of the boost set order, the, what's her name, Felina. So when she's placed on rear, from anywhere, you Soul Blast 1, you search your deck for only my stage, put it into your order zone, and then shuffle your deck. Now, of course, the order is the boost order for Lyrical. So at the beginning of your battle phase, you choose one of your back or rear guards, it gets a boost until end of turn. And then, of course, if Felina is chosen by that effect, she gets another 5k, she becomes a 15k booster, which is pretty good for this deck. I feel like this engine is almost very, very solid for this deck, for 2 very specific reasons. For one, having 15k boosters in the early game is absolutely insane, and this deck is basically only early game. This deck gets 1 good turn, and if it doesn't kill on that good turn, then it kind of just flops over and dies because it can't really do anything because it has no CB, it has no soul, it has no resources to do anything else. The other thing is it puts training wheels on Stola, where she can never get boost by her own skill. You can always choose her with only my stage if you desperately need to, which is, sometimes if these get outed or something, you can always just, give boost to Stola, like she should have inherently. But the other reason why this card is so good is, if you remember, I said the biggest problem with Herminia is the fact that it has a very hard time getting rid of its soul. Like most of the cards to get cards out of your soul are absolutely garbage. There's a card that's Soul Blast 1, get 2k on a grade 1 body. There's like, just like so many terrible cards that Soul Blast for basically nothing, which is another reason why the deck is absolutely terrible. This card at least does you the favor of, you know, thinning your deck and giving you a 15k booster at the same time. And there's also the combo that you can do with Frenchette, where if you desperately need another way to empty your soul, because what you need to do is you need to have 2 ways to empty your soul. By the time you get to grade 3, when you get to grade 2, you need to empty your soul so you can ride for free. And then when you get to grade 3, you need to empty your soul again of a grade 2 in order to actually do anything. Otherwise, you are a vanilla deck. So this card works very well because it is just another card that allows you to Soul Blast. And then if you're very desperate straits, you can always bounce this back and play it. Sometimes you do actually really want the 2 only my stage, especially in this deck where we're playing a low number of grade 1s. So being able to boost with your grade 2s is kind of just your win con in this deck. And then, of course, finishing off with the grade 1s, we are actually playing yet another 4 copies of Training Wheels for Herminia. This is the Discard Dragon. So when it's placed on rear, if your opponent's Vanguard is less than or equal to your opponent's Vanguard, it gets plus 2k. Then if you played in order, you can either Soul Charge 1 or Energy Charge 1. But the main skill we're playing this for is when your other cards discard from your hand during turn, EB3 and remove it. Choose one of the discard cards and put it into your hands. So you're discarding a lot of cards in this deck. You're discarding 2 to ride up to grade 1. You're not discarding to do any of your riding, but you are discarding, you know, for your base Herminia. If you have to discard a Herminia for for second Herminia and you didn't Persona Ride for whatever reason, this card can also just help you get that Herminia back. This card is just kind of absolutely essential in this deck if you actually want to play the deck at all, just because this deck kind of just negs itself for no reason, and doesn't really do that much to, like, you know, get those resources back. So this card is just another set of training wheels that this deck desperately needs in order to actually be functional. Then, of course, just finishing it off with the classic 20. Of course, we are playing the 4 PGs, using Crest Elementaria because I don't want to fucking waste a real Elementaria on this deck. For our trigger lineup, we are going full aggro. We've got the 8 crit here. Of course, we are actually also playing 3 front, because there is probably an argument that we should be playing draws instead of fronts because this deck is so combo oriented. But honestly, your deck is kind of just built to kill them instantly as quickly as possible. And, you know, fronts help that. Draws don't really do that as well because they're only giving 10k to one thing. And because of the fact that you're restanding everything, fronts are always live in pretty much every single situation. And then, of course, we do have our 4 heals. And for our OT, honestly, you can play whatever. I'm just playing yellow OT because it's draw power and removal. But, you know, that's kind of a terrible reason to actually just be playing this. You could literally play any other OT. It really doesn't matter most of the time. Alright, so before we move on, I do want to address a few things. Obviously, there's a few cards that are kind of good that I'm not playing in this deck, and I just want to go ahead and reiterate why. So first of all is this card, Custodia. Custodia is actually one of the best powerful units, but unfortunately, she is not a very good attacker. So when she's placed on rare, you do Soul Blast 1. As long as you have powerful, you choose 5 cards, or look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, choose a powerful, call it to rear, or add it to your hand. But if you add it to your hand, you discard, which can be mitigated with the Discard Dragon, so it's not actually that bad. And then she is also a 10k shield while you're on grade 3, so actually pretty decent and an overall solid card at that. But the main reason I'm playing her, not playing her, is because if you actually want to hit off of that that first skill, you have to play a lot more powerful units or kind of risk not hitting that. Like a lot of the times you might go Soul Blast 1, check top 7, PG, trigger, and then you get absolutely nothing. So you just Soul Blasted for 1 cost. So that's one reason I don't like her, because she can essentially kind of whiff, while she does serve the purpose of Soul Blasting, you know, you would prefer that, you know, your Soul Blast actually goes into something. Sometimes she does hit, and that's pretty cool, which is definitely what the deck needs, but the deck really needs Soul Blast 1, search a powerful unit, and call it, not check top 5. But, you know, it is still 10k shield, which is not bad per se, but, you know, the other issue with her is she doesn't gain any power. So if you want to go your Herminia turn, you swing 10, you restand her, okay, they got a defensive. She doesn't hit anymore. Or even you're going, let's say you're even going first, like, or they're on grade 3, you swing 20, restand, they hit a defensive. Oh, doesn't hit. She just doesn't gain any power, and that's just the main reason I did have to cut her. She is a solid card, but, you know, we just don't have enough good, powerful units to make that first cost, like, actually worth it. Of course, the next card is the other card we got in the last lyrical set, the bird up girl, but she also gets 10. She's also a 10k shield on Herminia, and you're powerful. Do remember that if you can't empty your soul, she's still a 5k shield. But at the end of the turn, if you have 5 or more units with the powerful ability, you return all your regards to save column of this card. She isn't actually restricted to returning only powerful units, so if you have her like behind a Frenchette, she can actually bounce the whole column. But the problem with this is you do actually have to have a full board. If this card said 3 units, okay, it'd be playable, it'd be super good actually, but the fact that you need 5 or more units makes this card unplayable. You literally have to have almost a complete board of nothing but powerful units. Like, yeah, this isn't as bad as Stolas, in the sense that it does count your Vanguard, but it might as well be, right? Because it either says 5, either say 5 or 4 more units, or just say 4 or more rear guards, including itself. It's just too hard to maintain. You have to commit all the cards from your hand, especially since you can only use one of these in a turn. So you can call this and then call this, but then what are you gonna do? Call 2 more cards from your hand just to bounce maybe 2 of them to your hand? It's just not consistent enough. It's a fine card, but it's just very inconsistent to actually get that off, and it is just not good enough. And then the last card, of course, is Musetta, who is actually a countercharger and does combo very, very well with Rely. As I said, you find yourself in a lot of situations where you have that 3 CB face down, but it doesn't matter because you need 1 extra CB in order to actually use Rely's skill because she costs CB2. This does technically get you there because you can restand everything for CB1 and then countercharge, and she does also help with the 19k attacker because it boosts her up to 21 so that she's actually a tolerable number. But the main reason I'm just not playing her is because I don't really have the space, in all honesty. One thing you could try out is maybe play this as your grade 1 slot, because you can always just revive it off Stolas. But in that instance, you are asking for 2 discards, because you are going to have to discard to ride up to grade 2 because you don't have a free ride. And you also have to get out the 0 and the 1 from the soul on your grade 2. Alright, let's go ahead and just finish this off with a test hand so you can kind of see what the deck's main game plan is. I think I'm pretty unlikely to actually have it. So this hand is kind of tolerable. You do desperately need this. Stola is here to kind of make sure that you kind of can do things. You actually have your powerful units. These cards are technically really good right now, but we don't actually need them, so we're going to put them back. Alright, hopefully we can draw into a little bit more of a playable plan here. The Frenchette is actually kind of good, but it does kind of need an actual powerful unit in order to enable it. Otherwise, it is just not as good, because what we can do here is if we draw a powerful unit, we can actually just reborn it off of the Stolas on our turn 2, and then bounce it back with the Frenchette, and then just do it all over next turn anyway. So we're just gonna go ahead and give it a shuffle. We're gonna stand up. This deck usually does want to go first because that is what it does. We drew into only my stage, which is actually kind of terrible, but we are going to discard here. Honestly, I think we do actually have to discard the Herminia because, things are very, very bad here. We're going to ride, and then we're going to Soul Blast, and we're going to have to discard it yet again. Honestly, in this situation, I think like our PG is probably our worst card because everything else is kind of a combo piece. So we're going to discard that and draw another card. If we had kept one of these, maybe we would have been in a lot better situation to, you know, actually discard that PG. So we're just going to take a damage, and then we're going to go draw a turn. Okay, we drew back our Herminia, so that's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and ride for free. In this situation, we do kind of need to get our soul empty, so unfortunately we only have one card that is actually capable of emptying our soul. That is going to be the Stolas, so we're going to be calling the Stolas, and then it doesn't actually have a grade restriction on the card that it can call, so you can actually just call a grade 3 while you're grade 2. And then we're going to go ahead and just build the rest of our board. We can actually call this here. It can be an 8k booster, and then we can call the Frenchette here. We're probably also going to want to play our order. Since we don't have 3 powerful rear guards, we only have 1. We're going to use it to give Stola actually boost. So we actually have some pretty decent columns here. In which case we probably would have wanted to call like this, because we can just go Herminia for 13. We can swing 20 with the Vanguard. Drive check 1 is going to be actually one of the powerful units that we do kind of need here, and then we can swing with the Frenchette for the first one. We have 5 different named units, so we can just bounce the Stolas back in order to do that. And also Stolas is going to remove the card from our soul, because that is part of effect. We're going to go ahead and take another damage here. For some reason I always hit damage heal triggers whenever I'm play testing. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and stand and draw. We'll be riding into our Herminia. Go ahead and just write it there. We do need a way to get a card out of soul. Since we do actually have the rely, we're going to actually go ahead and just use it. We're going to call this here and Soul Blast 1 in order to, you know, just get that extra 5k here. What I think we want to do here is we're going to give the grade 3 Herminia boost. So we're going to go ahead and swing. We're going to use Rely's skill here to counterblast 2 in order to get drive checks. If we only had 1 CV, we would have had to commit it to the Herminia. So we're going to drive check 1. So we did actually get this. So that's actually pretty good, because we do kind of need Persona Ride for next turn, even though if we have one, we could always just bounce it back with the Frenchette. So we're going to swing next with the Herminia. That's going to be 21. So go ahead and do our drive checks. Crit. And another crit. That's just like super lucky. We're going to restand the Rely, but unfortunately we can't use its skill because we don't have an extra CB. We do actually have to discard for this cost. It doesn't really matter what we discard. We just discard this, and then we can actually EV3, remove that card, and then just add whatever we discard back to our hand. So then we can go swing in the Rely, and then swing in the Frenchette. What we can actually do is just bounce back the Rely to make sure that our opponent isn't actually attacking into us. So we do definitely want to take at least 1 damage here, and then maybe just guard a couple more. Maybe even intercept with the Frenchette. We don't know what we're going to be getting off the top here. So we're going to stand and draw. We drew another Stolas, which is absolutely terrible. Definitely not what you want to be seeing. We're going to go ahead and Persona Ride here. We're going to draw our card. We just go into Gradius. We're definitely going to call this down too, because we do need a way to get rid of our last soul so that we can actually activate our powerful abilities. And that's actually pretty good because that enables us to get our last order, so it lets us deck thin at the same time as, you know, actually enabling a lot of our attack power. So here, I'm trying to think if there's a more optimal play. I think what I might actually do here is use the Stolas to just call a stupid booster, because actually I can actually use Stolas as a booster. So I could have guarded with like one of my Relies. It actually didn't matter if I got this back, because what we can actually do here is call the Stolas here, and then actually we can just revive one, because it's not really going to matter what it is. This is going to be hitting 13. It doesn't matter. This is going to be there. And then now we have a 25k column, 35 under Persona. This is 13 plus 10 plus 12. That's going to be 25. We don't actually need to give a Stolas boost because we do actually have 3 powerful rear guards, but as you can see, it's super inoptimal. But since we do have the 2 only my stage, we're going to choose both of these rear guards that don't have boost, and now we have a full column of 5 attacks. But it's not really going to be that powerful. Mind the language. Honestly, you could just boost here because a lot of this stuff is going to be dying to offensive. Like this is not going to be dying to. This is not going to be able to hit over a defensive anyway. So usually you probably just swing there, and then you can swing this column for just 20. You can't use your skill because you're not being reduced by CB1. You're not you can't use it. So that's why I keep saying this deck is terrible. So this is going to be a 33k column. We're going to go ahead and drive check 1. Front, very good. Crit. I mean, if you can drive check like this deck is god tier, because we're going to have to counterblast 1 since we Persona Road. We don't have 3 face-up damage, so it is not free. So we can just go ahead and go big number, big number. So that's gonna do it for the deck profile. Sorry if I was like super negative during this deck profile. It's just this deck does not want to work. It absolutely refuses to do what you want. Like half the time you're battling the deck and not your opponent. But if you want that, go ahead and try this profile out. Let me know how it turns out. But that's gonna be it from me. Don't forget to tell us you think, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.